Have you ever wondered why, after years of studying English, you still don't sound like a native speaker? You know the grammar, you know the words, but when you try to speak, something feels off. You listen to people in movies, podcasts, or everyday conversation, and it sounds so natural, so effortless. Then you try to speak, and suddenly it feels slow, unnatural, maybe even robotic. You start to think, what am I doing wrong? The truth is, it's not your fault. You were probably taught English in a way that's very different from how people actually speak it. Let's start with something simple. Think about how you learned English. You probably began with grammar books, rules, sentence structures, and exercises. You memorized words, you learned tenses, and maybe you even practiced by writing essays. That's great for understanding the language, but not enough for sounding natural, because in real life, people don't talk the way textbooks teach. When native speakers talk, they cut words, blend sounds, use fillers, and follow rhythm, not perfect grammar. Real English is alive. It breathes, it moves, it changes with every situation. For example, in your textbook you learn to say, I am going to eat. But most English speakers would say, I'm going to eat. The meaning is the same, but the sound is completely different. Textbook English is correct, but spoken English is connected. You can know all the words, but if you don't know how they sound together, you won't understand real conversations, and people won't understand you easily either. That's the gap between learning English and living English. Native speakers don't think about grammar when they speak. They think about ideas, emotions, timing, tone. They don't pause to remember if it's past perfect or present continuous. They speak in chunks, groups of words that go together naturally. For example, instead of thinking, what plus are plus you plus doing? They think and say it as one rhythm. What you doing? It's one sound, one flow. You can hear this everywhere, in TV shows, YouTube videos, street conversations, and it's the biggest reason learners struggle to keep up. You understand each word, but when they're spoken together, they sound completely different. That's how real spoken English works. Another big reason you don't sound like native speakers is because of rhythm and intonation. English has its own music. Some words are stressed, others are soft, and the voice goes up and down depending on emotion and meaning. For example, if you say, you really like it, flatly, it sounds boring. But if you say, you really like it, with rising intonation, it becomes a question full of curiosity. Or if you say, you really like it, with energy, it becomes excitement. The same words, but three different feelings. That's the secret of natural English. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. Many learners focus too much on correctness and forget about expression. But language is emotion. When you listen to people who grew up speaking English, you'll notice they stretch some words. They pause at strange moments. They use expressions like, you know, like, kinda, sorta. These are not mistakes. These are natural connectors that keep speech smooth. They help people think while talking. When you learn to use them, you don't just sound fluent, you sound alive. Let's talk about pronunciation for a moment. Pronunciation doesn't mean having an accent exactly like an American or British person. It means being clear, natural, and confident. One problem many learners face is that they pronounce every word separately because that's how they learned in school. But English is a stress-timed language, not syllable-timed. That means some words are stressed strongly while others are reduced or almost disappear. For example, in the sentence, I want to go to the store, a native speaker will say something like, I want to go to store. The words blend together. The to becomes da. The want to becomes wanna. When you start to hear these patterns, you begin to understand English the way it's really spoken. Fast, connected, and rhythmic. Another thing you might not realize is that English is full of shortcuts. People rarely say everything completely. They drop sounds, skip endings, and change pronunciations depending on speed. Did you becomes did ya. What are you becomes what ya. Don't know becomes dunno. You might think it's lazy, but it's not. It's just the natural evolution of spoken English. When you start listening closely and repeating these patterns, you'll find your fluency improving quickly, because your mouth and ears will finally match the way real English works. But sounding natural isn't only about pronunciation. It's also about culture and thinking patterns. The way people in English-speaking countries express themselves is different from how people in other languages do. For example, in some cultures, people speak directly. In others, they are more polite or indirect. English has its own balance. If someone asks, "Can you help me?" a native speaker might not just say yes, they might say, "Sure thing, yeah, of course, no problem," or "I got you." These small phrases carry warmth, friendliness, and tone. When you start to use them naturally, you connect better, not just speak better. Another hidden secret. Native speakers use a lot of emotional fillers and reactions. Words like, "Oh, really? Wow. Uh-huh. Right. Exactly." These seem small, but they make conversations feel real. Imagine two versions of the same talk. In one, you answer every question seriously and directly. In the other, you react, smile, show emotion. The second version always feels more fluent because communication is more than words. It's connection. The more you react like a real person, the more natural your English becomes. Let's also talk about speed. Many learners think they must speak fast to sound fluent. That's not true. Fluency isn't speed. It's flow. You can speak slowly and still sound fluent if your words connect naturally. Native speakers don't rush. They pause at the right time, they breathe, they change tone. They sound confident because they think in English rhythm, not because they speak faster than others. So instead of forcing speed, focus on flow. Practice speaking in natural phrases like, "You know what I mean? I guess so? That's interesting. I was thinking about it. It makes sense." The more you use these chunks, the more your brain stops translating and starts feeling the rhythm of English. Now, here's something most learners never practice: listening actively. To sound natural, you need to listen deeply, not just understand words. Listen to how people link sounds, where they pause, how their voice changes when they're excited, serious, sad, or joking. Copy those patterns. Shadow them. That means repeating immediately after hearing them, matching their tone and rhythm. It's one of the fastest ways to train your mouth and brain to work together. You can do this with podcasts, YouTube videos, or even short clips from your favorite shows. Don't just listen for meaning and listen for music. English has its melody, and when you catch it, you start to sound natural. The next thing is confidence. You might already know enough English to sound great, but fear holds you back. You think too much about mistakes, grammar, or accent. But every native speaker also makes mistakes. The difference is, they don't care. They keep going. They know communication matters more than perfection. Fluency isn't about being right all the time. It's about being comfortable enough to express yourself. So next time you talk, focus on connection, not correction. Let's look at another reason you might not sound like them: your environment. If you only use English in classrooms or during study time, you never hear or use real-world English. But language grows through exposure. You need to surround yourself with English that's alive. Songs, stories, conversations, YouTube videos, anything that sounds real. Try talking to yourself in English. Describe what you're doing, what you see, what you feel. Say things like, "I'm getting ready for work. I'm making tea. I can't believe it's raining again." The more you speak, the more your mouth learns to move naturally. You should also learn to think in English. This sounds hard, but it's not. Thinking in English means forming thoughts directly without translating. Start small. When you see something, name it in English. When you feel something, describe it in English in your head. Slowly, your brain will stop needing your native language as a bridge. That's when fluency starts to feel natural. Another key difference between how learners and native speakers talk is word choice. Native speakers use a lot of idioms, phrasal verbs, and informal expressions. For example, they say pick up instead of collect, hang out instead of spend time, figure out instead of understand. These small phrases make speech sound real. So start paying attention to these expressions and use them naturally. But don't try to memorize them like vocabulary lists. Learn them in context. Hear them in real conversations and then copy the rhythm and tone. Let's not forget about emotions. The reason native English sounds powerful is because it carries emotion. Every tone, pause, and expression has feeling behind it. When you talk, put emotion into your voice. Don't just say words, feel them. If you're happy, let it show. If you're surprised, let your tone rise. English is expressive, and the more you allow yourself to express, the more you sound like them. So why don't you sound like them yet? Because you're still treating English like a subject, not like a skill. Fluency isn't learned. It's developed. You don't become fluent by memorizing grammar. You become fluent by using it naturally, every day, without fear. You have to live the language. Listen,